This is the most underrated suburb in all of Kansas City. It's known for its small town feel, beautiful downtown. It has several public and private lakes throughout. And Nick, very competitive home prices.
That's right. This video is all about moving to the city of Lee Summit, Missouri. We're going to break down everything you need to know, where it's located, things to do, the schools, and if you stick around to the end, everything you need to know about the very competitive home prices for both new, older homes, and 3 of the top most popular neighborhoods you absolutely don't want to miss if you have any interest in moving here.
And if we haven't met yet, my name's Jordan.
My name's Nick. We help people buy and build homes all over Kansas City. One of the main questions we get is, if you lived on the Missouri side, where would you live? This is our answer to that question. Feel free to reach out anytime. Our contact info is on the screen, down in the description. We're gonna get started with part number 1, the location.
Now, an important part of why Lee Summit is the most underrated suburb in Kansas City is where it's located. So as you can see on the map, it's about 30 minutes southeast of downtown Kansas City, and it's also surrounded by other quickly growing suburbs such as Blue Springs and Raymore.
That's right, and it just so happens that Lee Summit is almost the epicenter of all of it. It's where a lot of people go to do things. It's got a lot of shops, restaurants, etc. But that hasn't always been the case. And that's because way back in the day, really the only thing connecting Lee Summit to Kansas City was the railroad. And after World War II, the highways got developed, transit became a little bit easier. And that's why you see this exponential growth in the population from that point forward. But fast forward to 2025, we still have a lot of undeveloped land. And that's one important reason why Lee Summit has such a small town feel. It's charming, unique, while still feeling and offering everything that you could want in a traditional suburb.
Now, Nick, that's not to say there's not any development going on. There is a ton of development with housing, shopping centers, and the new downtown Green Street Marketplace.
That's right, Jordan. We'll put this article on the screen here, and we'll put up a couple of the renders as well. But it's a very nice addition to downtown Lee Summit. It's been in the works for a very long time, and it'll include a new farmer's market, an event space, an outdoor performance area, restaurants, a boutique hotel, and also urban apartments as well.
And that leads us to part number 2 in the video, which is things to do in Lee Summit. And one of the things that sets Lee Summit apart from these other suburbs is its vibrant downtown area.
That's right. It's a big deal. And the reason it's important is because not every major suburb around Kansas City has like a dedicated downtown area. And to take this one step further, not every suburb in Kansas City is a like self-sustained city where you would virtually never have to leave. But Lee Summit has all the shops, restaurants, entertainment spots you could possibly want. In addition to downtown, which we'll get into in a second, you've also got almost a brand new shopping center just a few minutes away, Summit Fair, Summit Woods Crossing. That's where you'll find your more chain stores, bigger box stores. But what's really unique about downtown Lee Summit, Jordan, a lot of local and small businesses.
A lot of local businesses. When you go downtown, you're gonna find local breweries, restaurants, and boutique shops, which is very, very cool. Also in the downtown area, every year they hold a farmer's market. It's 2 days a week from April to November. And they also have what's called Fourth Fridays. And that's an art fair where they have live music, artists, and theater all downtown. And it's over the summer, makes it a really good family-friendly place.
That's right. And the Green Street Marketplace, that'll be a nice addition to enhance all of that. But really, it's not just the amenities, it's also some of the programming, some of the community building events just like that make it so unique. And also that really contribute to the small town feel. Now, if you love the outdoors, we mentioned it in the intro. You can see it in the back. We haven't mentioned this yet. We should have mentioned this before now. But Lee Summit, one of the things that makes it unique is you have a ton of private and public lakes virtually surrounding the city. And the reason that's important is because if you're moving here from the coast where you've got maybe mountains, beaches, etc., you might be thinking about Kansas City as this just flat piece of land with nothing to do right smack dab in the middle of the country. And that might apply to most parts of Kansas City, but it certainly doesn't apply right here in Lee Summit. Now, the lake right behind us is called Lake Giacomo. We kind of went back and forth about how to pronounce that. So if I butchered it, let us know down in the comments below. But really, you've got several lakes surrounding the city. You've got Raintree Lake, which is one neighborhood we'll talk about here in a second. You've got Lakewood, which is a private lake on the north side. That's another neighborhood that's good to know. Prairie Tree Lake, and then finally, you've also got 2 completely completely separate cities that are lake communities. You've got Lake Winnebago and Lake Lotawana. And there's absolutely some of the most expensive homes you'll find in Kansas City writ large can be found right there, Tier 1 lakefront.
Now, in addition to all the lakes surrounding Lee Summit, the city parks, there's also the James A. Reed Memorial Wildlife Area that's not in Lee Summit, but it is right next door on the southeast side. And it's over 3,000 acres. And they have a shooting range, archery, trails, biking, horseback riding. I mean, almost everything you can think of, along with camping. Now, you can go fishing, and they do require permits for certain things, but a very cool place.
Now, one thing that's important to know while you're enjoying all of the amenities in Lee Summit, we came across this article in the Kansas City Star, recent study, a recent report named the city of Lee Summit one of the top 25 safest in the entire country, which is certainly nice to hear. But we're going to move on to something else that I know is important to a lot of you, which are the schools.
Now, even if you don't have any kids and you don't care about the schools, it still matters because it affects your property value, your resale value, and the property taxes.
That's right. And one other thing you should know, it's not just the safety factor in Lee Summit, but according to niche.com, the Lee Summit School District is one of the highest rated in all of Kansas City, the entire metro area. And we'll put the ratings for each of the individual schools on the screen right here for you so you can see them. But just like most suburbs around Kansas City, the boundaries, they are incredibly confusing. And even though it is in Lee Summit, there are some neighborhoods that will fall in different school districts. One of those in the area we're at, kind of near the Lakewood area, would be the Blue Springs School District. So we'll put those ratings on the screen too. It's also very highly rated. And because of that, it appears that Lee Summit checks a lot of boxes for a lot of people. That's one of the reasons we think it's underrated. But don't base your decision entirely off of the ratings. It's important to step foot here. One thing I hear, for example, when talking to people who live here, who move here, youth sports is really, really big. And finding out inside knowledge like that, I think that's absolutely critical. It is an important part of your move.
All right, now it's time for part number 4 of the video, which is all about home prices in Lee Summit, Missouri. We'll get to new construction prices in part number 5, which you're not going to want to miss because Lee Summit has some of the best options with new construction around Kansas City.
Now, one of the largest reasons that the city of Lee Summit is so underrated has to do with the home prices and the number of options on the market. For example, we had a client moving here this year from out of state, and the price point that they wanted to find a home for was under $300,000. The only catch is in the housing market here in Kansas City, we've got a housing shortage. That also happens to be one of the most competitive price points you could be looking at a home, especially if you're looking somewhere in Johnson County, which is where we started this search. But after looking at what they could have gotten for that price, it was very clear that we had to find out a better solution, something that checked more of their boxes, better condition, etc. And the one city we turned to, it was Lee Summit. And as soon as we made that change, we saw several homes that could have made sense for them. They ended up finding one not too far away from here, about 10 minutes away. Now, we're also going to back that up with some of the numbers. So Jordan, we're going to put this chart on the screen.
Yeah, so what makes Lee Summit very unique is that the median home price is $390,000, which still falls below that national average, making it a very affordable, attractive place to buy a home.
Now, that's especially true if you compare it to suburbs like Overland Park, which is a very highly rated one that I know a lot of you are interested in. But you can see that median close price is around $470,000. Similar kind of story for Lenexa, Shawnee, Olathe. We compare to other Missouri suburbs like Blue Springs, yes, you're going to get something more affordable, but does it come with all of the amenities that you have in such a close proximity right here? That one's up for debate, but one thing that's not is that the homes are taking longer to sell in the city of Lee Summit than any other city on that list. You can see the median days to sell is about 12 days. And the reason that matters for you is because the longer those properties sit, and the more options you have on the market, the better deal you're inevitably going to get. And so far in the city of Lee Summit, I haven't had any clients get into bidding wars. We've been able to negotiate on some of these, even homes that had a ton of value that were already priced very well. And that has to do with the fact that there are so many options on the market right now.
That's right, Nick. And digging into the numbers, as you can see on the chart here, Lee Summit is right in the middle of the pack at $390,000 median home price. It's more affordable than major suburbs in Johnson County like Overland Park, Olathe, Shawnee, and Lenexa. And the reason that we're comparing them is they all have similar amenities.
That's right. And really, it's not just the $80,000 some price difference between like Overland Park, for example, and Lee Summit. So if you take a look at this next chart, you'll notice the number of new listings. That's the part that we're really focused on here. Overland Park, you got about 2,000. That's a very big city. The population size is around 200,000 people. If we go down all the way to Lee Summit, you'll notice the number of listings, 1,450. That's a pretty good amount, not quite as high as 2,000. But the population of Lee Summit, it's like 100,000.
Yeah, it's almost half.
Half the size. So do keep that in mind. Now, it's not just the number of homes on the market, it's not just the more competitive prices, but it's also the size of the homes in Lee Summit that are on the market. The actual square footage is pretty big. Just take a look at this chart.
That's right, Nick. You got Overland Park in the top seat at 2,915 square foot, average home size sold there. Lee Summit, number 3 on the list. And remember, it was number 5 in home price at $390, $80,000 less than Overland Park. We're at 2,659 square feet, the average home sold here in Lee Summit.
That's right. And that value goes both ways, right? Lee Summit, it was the middle of the pack on price. And there were some areas that were lower in price. But let's take one, for example, Blue Springs. $300,000 median price is about $80,000 cheaper than what you'd find in Lee Summit. But you'll also notice it has a little bit less square footage, almost 400 square feet less, which makes the competitive home pricing in Lee Summit that much more impressive.
Now moving on to part 5, it's all about new construction home prices in Lee Summit. A lot of what we talked about in part 4, the pre-existing home sales, applies here to new construction as well. So one of the things that makes Lee Summit unique when it comes to new construction is all the options available. It has more options for new construction homes than any other suburb in Kansas City besides Kansas City proper.
And here's another distinction. We already discussed how that's a much larger city than Lee Summit, but the building codes are also far more strict, which means it could very well cost you $20,000 to $30,000 or more just to build there versus Lee Summit if all other factors were the exact same. So take a look at this chart that we've got on the screen. This shows the median sale price for new construction homes in all those same suburbs that we compared to on the pre-existing homes. And you can notice Overland Park, 836. You've got like an Olathe, Kansas, 650. And then you've got Lee Summit, $570,000. But what's even more impressive, Jordan, look at that second column, the number of new listings on the market. We've got Lee Summit at a staggering 444 new homes listed on the market in the last 12 months. And the reason that matters is very similar to why it matters for pre-existing homes. More options, usually going to find more value, something that can hit your timeline. And that's exactly what happened with some of my clients who actually started looking at pre-existing homes, noticed that the pricing for new construction was not that much higher. And after looking at options all around the city, we found one specific neighborhood with one specific home on the market that if it was in a city like Overland Park, would have easily been maybe $1 million.
Yeah.
It had a clay tile roof, real maple hardwood floors, casement windows throughout, all finishes that we typically don't see in like Johnson County, for example, till you get to like the 800s, 900s, and $1 million plus. And they locked that up for about $575,000 and even got a credit from the builder on top of that. Now, we obviously can't promise the same thing for you, but what we can promise is that there's a lot of value in a lot of these homes for the price that you can find in Lee Summit. So any questions, buying, building a new construction home in Lee Summit or any of the Kansas City suburbs, make sure to reach out because we'd love to do the same for you. Now, Jordan, before we go, we've got one last thing. We promised we'd give you some of the most popular neighborhoods. So we're going to start with the new construction ones first and then end with pre-existing.
Yeah, so just a couple notable neighborhoods in Lee Summit, new construction neighborhoods. You have Hook Farms, which is on the south end of Lee Summit. You have Woodside Ridge, Woodland Oaks, Kensington Farms, and Park Ridge.
That's right. And I would say for pre-existing homes, you're going to find some really good options in 3 specific areas. I think one is Winterset. They've been building out there for decades now. It's a huge master plan community, tons of amenities. And some of those homes are even larger than the 2,600 square feet we talked about. Some of them are close to 3,600, 4,000 square feet. And second one would be Raintree Lake. Absolutely beautiful. It's a private lake community. I've seen some lots available, but most of these homes were built in the late 90s and some of them the early 2000s. And then finally, the third corner of Lee Summit would have to be the Lakewood area. It's kind of the area we're in right now. And it's known for a lot of its amenities. It's got several pools.
And it's even got 2 lakes.
That's right. And any questions about buying or building a home in the Kansas City suburbs, whether it's Lee Summit or any other suburb, we'd love to do this for you and make it all specific to your area of interest. So give us a phone call, text message, email. And before you go, we're actually going to point to one video on the screen. If you're relocating here from out of state, breaks down the whole process, the 4 main areas, and the actual logistics of how to make the move, even if you have to sell a home in your current state. So click right there. We'll see you on the other side.